Alright guys, welcome back again to more Witch on the Holy Night. We are currently in the middle of chapter 11, I believe, and things are getting pretty serious. Not that they weren't already, but they're getting even more intense than usual. So, we're going to continue on and see how this goes. So if anything else, I hope you all continue to enjoy. Thank you again for all the love and support, and let's do this. Alright everyone, welcome back. It was a fresh-faced grin that belied his age. Whenever it came to Aoko, he seemed to forget his role as a priest. But that was irrelevant to Sojiro.
神父さん、それで結局自分は青子のどこら辺に憧れてるんですか?
Sojiro responded to Father Eiichi's rambling by being direct. Some would say the priest had been direct himself, but this was Sojiro, and he needed things spelled out.
今のでもわからないと。参りましたね。こういうことは言葉を尽くすほど実感が湧かないものですが、私も神父と呼ばれる身です。少し切り口を変えて代弁してみましょう。あなたは青子の過去を知っていますか？
詳しくは知りません。高校デビューとかおかしな言葉を口にしてましたけど。
全く知らないということですね。いいでしょう。ではしずきくん、虐待のない例え話ですが、君は突然自殺しろと言われて従えますか？
自殺ですか？
そう、自殺です。神父である私が口にしていいことではありませんが、私は格好だけなのでいいでしょう。
See, this is how you know he's pretty sinister. His glasses fogged up at the moment he asked about the question of wanting to kill yourself.
青子はね、近いことを求められたのです。15歳の時に。彼女がそれまで積み重ねてきた努力も希望も過去も未来も全て捨てること。今日からお前は違う生き物として生きろとね。どうです？それは自己の抹消、未来の死と同じだと思いませんか？
His words fit what Aoko had said about her past. Until middle school, she led a normal life. Then out of the blue, she became the family heiress in place of her sister. Becoming a magician meant casting aside the life she had known. She had to leave behind her ambitions and prospects, and live the life of a mage, something she barely knew anything about. Her life up to that point had taught her that everything from then on would bring her misery. Aoko's grandfather was not the forceful type. Your sister has failed. Now it's your turn, he had said. Did Aoko resist? Sojiro could not begin to imagine. All he knew is that she could not be happy with the hand she was dealt. Even if the life of a magician was attractive, to believe the possibility that Aoko could give up her lifestyle up to that point was to not know her at all. Aoko Aozaki put her all into everything. She had probably achieved a lot in those 15 years. Her achievements and prospects were no doubt enough to make anyone jealous. But did she have the conviction to doze away and go back to square one? Oh, they meant to say, but did she have the conviction to throw those away and go back to square one? And square one did not come close to the reality of it. The future she had envisioned for so long would have been obliterated.
青子はどうしたんですか?
いやー、これがもう全くの頑固者でして。立ち会った私でさえどうかと思うぐらい簡単にうなずきました。震える指を懸命に握り込んで、やってやろうじゃないと見栄を切ってね。彼女は祖父の期待や青崎の責任感からではなく、逃げることを嫌って魔術師の道を取ったんですよ。 拒むことは逃げではないのでしょうが、青子にはそう思えたんでしょう。逃避という行為はこれまでの自分の時間を否定することになると。今までの自分を嘘にしてしまうのなら、今までの生活に別れを告げることを青子は選んだのです。まあ極端ではありますが、あれは前に進むためなら全てを捨てられる人間なんです。
An affectionate smile crossed Father Aries' face. Rather than signaling his closeness to Aoko, it conveyed the pride of a guardian.
ですが、私も思い違いをしていました。結局はそうなるように、青子は育てられていたのです。彼女の祖父は、瞳子が家を出ることも、青子が跡継ぎを了解することも読んだ上で、あの二人を育ててきた。形だけですが、私も神父としてさすがにそれはどうかと思いましてね。柄にもなく青子を説得したものです。祖父の思い通りになることはありません。なんなら私とメキシコあたりに逃げませんかと。しかしまあ躊躇なく振られました。その時の彼女の返答は今でも一言一句覚えています。
だって私一人がどんなに泣き叫んでも今の状況は変わらないんでしょ。私にしかできないなら正面から受けて立つ。たとえ不本意で突然投げ込まれた川の中でだってできることはあるはずだもの。逃げるなんてのは最後の最後。それまではせいぜい華麗に踊ってやるわ。
The priest recited her words as if recalling lines from her favorite play. It certainly seemed like something she would say. The last thing Aoko said in the room she was recovering in probably meant the same. Of course, when an audience is watching, you want their approval. However, approval must come from within first. Aoko worked to feel proud of herself before worrying about how others viewed her. She at least wanted to do her job with grace. In response to everything she had lost, she would hang in there, even if it meant going it alone. Can I just take a minute to say how much I'm enjoying this soundtrack right now? It meshes so well with the mood, and how like Sojo is slowly coming to terms with understanding Aoko at long last, or at least, you know, somewhat better than he did before. As for why Sojiro envied her, well, that was obvious. To Sojiro, she lived her life with her head held high. He was a boy who accepted everything, but had nothing. She was a girl who threw it all away, but never lost a thing. He stood in the meeting room alone, seeing the ugliness within, and the sublime outside. Looking back, he finally realized what was eating at him.
もういいでしょう。君は青子の容姿に感じ入ったのではなく、青崎青子という生き方に感じ入ったのです。ま、青子は青子で、れっきとした美人ですが。
Sojiro nodded. From the day he first met her, that was indeed how he had felt. It just took him till now to realize it. The strength in her eyes and her unwavering will had captured his heart.
なんかすごい汗我慢だ。
本当に小娘のくせにギネス級の頑固さです。
Father Aries spoke from the heart. Sojiro raised his head, gave a small grin, and scratched his cheek. So many hours wasted brooding like an idiot. A part of him still felt strange, but it didn't bother him to leave the question unsolved for now. Unable to stay still, he stood up. He couldn't care less about Aozaki family mage battles or Aoko rushing off to her death. Right now, he just wanted to see her face.
お待ちなさい。病室は立ち入り禁止です。
The cold words echoed around the chapel. They reached Sojiro as he was about to head back to Aoko. The sightless sister must have been waiting by the altar. She moved quickly to block his path.
ゆいかさん、今病室には入れないんですか？
はい。しばらく人よけをしてほしいとクオンジ様からことづかっています。
アリスが？
Sojiro was suspicious of why Alice would have said that. He could understand being kept out if Aoko was being treated or her condition had worsened, but this seemed different. Besides, Aoko herself said her treatment had finished.
人がいいのですね、シスターユイカは。そんな方便をしなくてもいいんですよ。はっきり言ってあげればいい。今から病室に行っても無駄です。と。青子はとっくに出発しているんですから。
エイリ神父。
The priest began to explain everything from the pew he still sat in, about the things he and Sojiro had spoken about, and why he, a stranger, would be so concerned about a person he knew nothing about. It all became clear to Sojiro.
初めからそのつもりだったんですね。
Sojiro's voice was full of anger, but Father Eri did not flinch.
申し訳ありません。青子にあなたの保護を頼まれたもので。彼女の準備が整うまでの時間稼ぎでしたが、私があなたと話をしたかったのは事実ですよ。
The priest's attempt to smooth things over was far from sincere. Sojiro grit his teeth to control his rage. Why had they not stopped Aoko and Alice from heading towards certain death? Because both the nun and the priest were of the same ilk as the mages. As such, they understood Aoko's decision, and the priest understood Aoko too. Even if he did have the power to stop her, he would not have. The Aoko Aozaki he knew was not about to hide away in a church and lick her wounds.
アリスは？
青子と行きましたよ。あれから30分は過ぎていますね。
Father Eri even went so far as to divulge the time. 30 minutes ago, the same time the priest reared his head. It would not take even half that long to get to the school from here. And then another 10 minutes or less to get to Misaki High's old school building from there. Sojiro turned to the entrance of the chapel. However...
待ちなさい。どこへ行くつもりですか？
The sound of her voice stopped him in his tracks. An unseen pressure had locked him in place. Her admonition seemed to carry a spellbinding power, stopping the foolhardy boy from where he stood.
あなたは魔術師同士の争いを知りません。何の助力にもならないばかりか、彼女たちの足かせになるだけです。彼女たちが命を落とすのは彼女たちの業によるもの。望むままに傷つけ合えばいいでしょう。あなたのような何の咎もない若者が矜持に立ち会うことはありません。
She spoke with quiet anger. Her contempt was not directed at Aoko or Alice, but Sojiro for being so eager to waste his life.
何かしら希望があるのなら私も止めはしません。ですがこの件は別です。あなたが言っても彼女たちが助かることはありません。
She was right. It would be pointless of him to go. At the amusement park, he had been useless in the end. Now, they faced something even worse. He couldn't even imagine how he might contribute this time.
言っておきますが、青崎青子は祖父に護身術を教え込まれています。魔術以外でもあなたより腕は立つ。その彼女も、あの使い魔が相手では勝負にならない。
Sojiro's physical strength, his only edge, meant nothing. If he went now, he would only get in their way. Yuika was correct, and yet...
でも、行かないと。青子には返さなくちゃいけない借りがあります。
He spoke calmly, but firmly. Though almost moved, the sister frowned slightly. She felt bad for him, but her warning was for his own good. If he would not listen to reason, then she would have to make him sleep. She raised a finger of binding at Sojiro.
それを言うなら返したい借りがあるですよ、宗十郎くん。それとシスターユイカ、教会内での魔術は控えてくださいね。使うのなら秘跡に留めてもらわないと私の査定に響きます。まったくおとなしそうに見えて律香くんより短気なんですから、あなたは。
エイリ神父、しかし。
行かせてあげればいいじゃないですか。それともあなたはやはり青子たちに退場してほしいと？
その問題と彼の献身は別の話です。改めなさい、しずきさん。あなたが言っても何もできはしないのですから。
The truth of the statement cut Sojiro deep. But despite everything that was being said, his mind was made up. It always had been. Even if he was not certain, he at least would not hesitate. He had always followed his instincts to the end, no matter where they took him.
分かっています。でも行かないと。ここにいたら本当に何もできない。
His heart burned in his chest. While he listened to the priest talk, he could only think of seeing Aoko. He was not worried. He did not want to help. He just wanted to see her. He would figure out what came next once he got there.
ほら、献身なんて考え自体が間違ってるんです。足を引っ張ると言いますが、どのみち青子たちに勝ち目はないんでしょう？なら彼がマイナスになってもいいじゃないですか。どうせ破産するなら豪快に破産すれば。
神父。
ほら宗十郎くん、言って言って。シスター、今のあなたの返事で心が折れましたから。
More like it moved you to a point where you want him out anyway.
足動くでしょ？
As soon as the priest pointed at Sojiro, he could move again. The pressure weighing on his shoulders lifted, along with the fear in his heart. Could he help? Would he expose Aoko and Alice to more danger? All such doubts had vanished.
行きます。縁が残っていればまた。
はい。なんであれ、後悔のない一日を。
And with that, Sojiro began to run, as Father Eiri watched with a look of satisfaction. The priest knew if he could not persuade Aoko, he could not convince Sojiro either. He watched the impetuous boy run away, as the blind nun listened to his footsteps fade into the distance. Yuiko was different from Sojiro and the priest. While she showed no mercy to corruption or self-righteousness, she embraced benevolence to the innocent. Such an ordinary boy with his life ahead of him, and yet he chose to follow heretics into hell.
最悪ですね、エイリ神父。分別のつかない子供を導くのが責任のある大人だと思いましたが。
She made no effort to hide her biting disapproval. It was simply her way of showing concern for the boy. Father Eiri shrugged.
だから、いろいろと間違えていますよ、シスターユイカ。責任のある大人なんて言葉自体がおかしい。何が起きても責任を取る。それが正しい大人というものです。
The rest went unspoken. It didn't matter to him which of them died. With a warm goodbye smile, the priest corrected the nun's misunderstanding. Oh, a junction. And now we save, because we're getting ready for the second one. Alright guys, next chapter, Witch on the Holy Night 2. The golden wolf's ears stood pointed, twitching in response to the sounds around it. Its meal finished, It curled up into a ball in anticipation of nap time and yawned, half from boredom. The old abandoned classroom had fulfilled its purpose many moons ago. For a month, the wolf had spent his time resting on top a heap of disheveled desks. His name was Lou Beowulf. He was a purebred werewolf, named after the sun at his birthplace, and a hero of legend upon leaving there. It goes without saying, he was not from this country. He came from a land deep within the European wilderness, surrounded by mountains and forests. His home was a realm no human had ever set foot in. In their isolated world forgotten by time, a diminishing race of werewolves lived in peace. This is where Bale first appeared. In a cave on the outskirts of their village, the werewolves found a child bearing the same golden coat as their ancestors. The child was sleeping soundly, as if in his natural habitat. The village welcomed their new member with open arms. 2,000 years of advanced civilization had been cruel to them. As the forests were destroyed, valleys unearthed, and waters polluted, the werewolf birth rate dwindled. They were now facing one birth a decade. The child's golden coat deviating from the typical gray or white, and shared only by their ancestors who were treated as gods, felt like a sign their prayers had been answered. A bloodline in atrophy. The werewolves were forced to embrace change. This radiant child at least temporarily made them forget about their troubles. Alas, as time passed, their hopes turned to disappointment. The golden wolf was not their salvation. For some reason, Lou, that ray of golden sun, remained a child. Decades passed and still he did not grow. Forever young, immortal, cursed. He searched the village for his birth mother, but to no avail. He searched the village for someone who understood his plight, but to no avail. Over hundreds of years, he came to realize something. He was different. Very different. Neither male nor female. Neither strong nor weak. Ignorant of life and death, joy and fear. That thing's a spirit born of nature. Might look like us werewolves, but don't let that fool you. But the child himself needed not conjecture to know his own true nature. He was perfect, and therefore he was alone. To the golden wolf, the world was too small. That was why. Indeed, that was the very reason. He wanted to know what life was. He wanted to know loss. If he was all-powerful, he wanted to know the mystery behind his all-powerfulness. Because as it was, his existence was meaningless. The golden wolf was at a loss, as were the werewolves around him. They revered him, but at the same time wanted nothing to do with him. Lou moved back to the cave he was discovered in, and resigned himself to a life of seclusion.
太陽のルー？ルーガルじゃなくて？そりゃ面白い。偶然にしちゃできすぎだ。
And then one day, a quirky mage visited the village.
またガタガタとうるさい。トウコさんはあれだよね。派手好きなくせに豆だよね。
From his place on top of the rubble, Bayo peered into the hallway. He thought his fussy master was busy dealing with Misaki City's ley lines, but she was engrossed in making traps. 1 month passed since they made the dilapidated building their makeshift workshop. Creating a new trap for intruders became a daily pursuit of Toko's.
安全を用意しておくなんて、他の生き物は大変だ。
Having been like this since birth, knowing neither infancy nor dotage, he thought differently than others. For he was perfect from the day he was born, never declining, never improving. As such, he had no comprehension of weakness. Childlike, fickle, and without morals, he had no concept of good and bad, as neither a human or a wolf. A beautiful creature disconnected from the world around him, he was on top of all other creatures. With one exception, his master, Toko Aozaki. She showed him a sparkling, delicious world, and above all, he found her scent refreshing. To him, the world was divided into what was cool and what was not. Your preference in leisure pursuits were of no consequence to him, and he never took gender into account. The only thing that mattered to him was whether a person's life was logical and therefore cool. Toko Awazaki had her faults, but she smelled good.
ベオ、昼食は済ませたか？
Bayo's master entered the classroom, presumably done with her traps for the day.
夜が本番だ。それまであまり羽目を外すなよ。
Sometimes, like now, she would nag him, but on the whole, his master pleased him. In reality, the contract binding her to him was not particularly powerful. If he wanted to, he could tear her to pieces at any time. No human could restrain him. However, he had no intention of killing Toko in exchange for his freedom. And there was reason for this. In order to move about freely in human society, he needed someone like her. As long as she did not offend him, he had no reason to rock the boat. However,
やっと本番か。待たせすぎだよ、トウコさん。
the promise she had made him in his cave and the reality of the situation had begun to come apart at the seams.
来い。最高の神秘と戦わせてやる。
He was compliant up to now, but his patience was wearing thin. The fight with the newest magician last night was an enormous letdown.
そういうな。私も昨日は拍子抜けだったんだから。
いいけどね。実はあの子、使わないんじゃなくて、使えないだけじゃないの？
His master's expression turned serious. Not in agreement at the wolf's question, though, for she had already asked herself the same and many other similar questions.
いや、使うぐらいなら死んだ方がマシなのかもな。
そんなバカなことがあるの？使わないと死んじゃう状態だったんだよ。
だから、そんなバカな考えが成立するぐらい。
That it must be too terrifying to use, Toko finished in her head. She stopped short of voicing it and chuckled at her emotional outburst.
どれほどのものか想像がつかないのは確かだ。だがまあ、根本は変わらないさ。魔法がどのような奇跡神秘の類であれ、魔術師である以上、青子に勝ち目はない。
With those words, Bayo's master walked out of the room, emphasizing that his role in all of this was to face Aoko only at that very moment.
魔法ね。
The bored look in his eye shifted. He recalled the taste of that girl, his long tongue sliding over his chainsaw like fangs. Make no mistake, he would finish his meal. He was the oldest werewolf, the golden god of the forest. For as long as he could remember, no, from the moment he appeared, he had been the most powerful creature of all. All man-made mystics were trash before him. Magecraft was laughable, and mystic artificial miracles, which even surpassed that, were superfluous. Futile, their very existence was an insult to him.
もちろん、そういう契約だし、ちゃんと平らげはするけれど。
That was the extent of their pact. Once he had dealt with this so-called true magic, he was free. His eyes burned with the wolf inside of him, his fanged maw twisting into a sadistic beastly grin. It was just past 7 p.m. Misaki High School's old building stood silently. While life in the city reached the area, the forest and mountains kept the area hushed. Nothing unusual. During winter vacation, the old building, now still covered in yesterday's snow, was rarely used. But outside into life, such unused structures were mere monuments of what once was, nothing more. The old school building would remain that way until the start of the new semester. Behind it, the vast forest grew darker by the minute. If the building had died in just under 2 weeks of vacation, what had become of the forest over the years? The wall of overgrown trees filtered out the noise of the city, and most of the moonlight. An otherworldly realm had taken root, not even 2 miles away from town, piercing the cold night air. Footsteps crunch through the powdery snow.
この辺りに仕掛けはなさそうね。それでどうするの？このまま急行車に忍び込む？
Alright guys, I'm gonna end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. When we come back, we'll be continuing on in part 2 of Witch on the Holy Night, chapter 12.